He hasn't missed anything yet. So anybody who else comes in, they'll be a little bit behind, but they'll miss a little bit about me, so that's fine. So I'm the CEO of a company that I started called Bit-Space Development. I started the BIT program in August 2012, and I graduated in February 2015. So, the 2.5-year shenanigans that go on with BIT. I did my co-op work term with a company called Bold Innovation Group. They're just outside of the city in Ildeshane, Manitoba. So I started with a team that was this. So there's me, obviously. It's my friend Grandel. He also a grad of the program. We graduated together. Sivan and Eric, they're both Red River grads of this program in its previous life. So they're from the IST program, and that's you, Lynn. And we helped turn it into this. So when I started, we were in a garage, and we helped them develop their applications and all that fun stuff, and we turned it into a team. By the time I left, it was about 50-some people. I think they're still growing. This is me. You can't really tell. It's such a different picture, but I've got my hood on. This is the goofy picture. We did a lot of this. So I'm playing Flip Cup. From the very beginning, I knew that I wanted to work at a company that wasn't super, corporate. Obviously not corporate at all. I didn't want to wear a tie. I wanted to work somewhere that I could make, a considerable difference. So I started working with a startup. I wasn't into the startup community or anything so much before. I mean, I went to events and hung out with some of the companies around here. Right behind us, right there, is Innovation Alley. So you can look out this back window and you can look right down Innovation Alley. You have Startup Winnipeg, Ramp Up Manitoba, AscentWorks in that building. Down the street you have Securus, one of the bigger technology companies. They do web security, so if you're looking into networking, Securus does security. There's Permission Click. They are a tech startup, relatively new. They've been doing it only for a few years. There's Skip the Dishes, if you've heard of Skip the Dishes. They have a huge office just down the street, actually in the Manitoba Technology Accelerator. There's co-working space, so for $100 a month, you can get a desk right across the street, work alongside other technology entrepreneurs, build a company, and I'm just down the street. So some of my personal achievements, all while being in the program or just shortly after. So I did my co-op term, so I'm sure they've been talking to you about co-op or project. If they haven't yet, I'm sure you're about to hear a lot about it. I'll talk about it. So I did the co-op term. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with the project term, I just happened to do the co-op route. I learned a whole bunch, and I applied it to starting my own company. So I left the company that I was working with on very good terms. I'm still friends with them. And I founded Bit-Space Development just in March of this year. I published my first book in June of this year, and I received an award this year for the Co-op Student of the Year 2014. So it's a little bit after you get an award for that. Thank you. So this is all the fun people I worked with all summer. There's Catherine, our camera lady.
I'm wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, look at that. She works for Red River, so she does videos and other such things. I had the pleasure of working with her all summer in the same office. Guy Dugas, he's my mentor, one of my best friends. And this is, of course, me and my girlfriend, now fiance, and my Brazilian students. So the students, they're Red River College students. They all came from Brazil, and they all worked with me for the summer on various projects, all related to web and virtual reality. So what do I do? So I specialize in project management using Scrum. So Scrum is an agile methodology framework, if you will, for managing projects. It's a little different than traditional project management where you are handing someone a task. In this way, you're actually pulling in the tasks. So you as a developer, you say, I can do this. I can realistically do this in the time frame. I'll pull this in. It's much more relaxed, a little faster paced, but it's super effective. That's how we manage projects at my company. and that's part of the reason why we're so far successful. We specialize in gamified education, virtual reality, spherical photography, interactive digital media, single board computing, and 3D printing, and most of that means probably nothing to all of you, or at least a little bit. What it really boils down to is we build fun things that make learning fun. So we build games inside of virtual reality that make it interesting to learn about trades or, learning tools.
What have you been doing with 3D printing?
What have I been doing with 3D printing? Mostly prototyping mounts for phones. So for example, I have my cell phone. I 3D printed a mount for my phone to slide into so I could shoot photospheres using my cell phone.
Okay.
That goes hand in hand with the software portion where we're building a CMS for serving these up. So we're actually about to launch one of our first products. So my experience with Red River, I started Red River with a little bit of previous experience in computers and technology, mostly self-taught. I wanted to be a Linux administrator. I was thinking about the networking stream. I was very much into computer hardware. I built my gaming computer. The first computer I ever owned, I had to build myself. Of course, being a poor student when I was in high school, you guys probably know. I didn't want to. I'm ethically opposed to pirating software. I'm very open source, free for the people sort of stuff. So Linux was a natural fit. So I started playing with various versions of Linux. I still use Linux. This laptop runs Linux, although I'm on Windows 10 right now, still evaluating. I immediately changed my mind from Linux administration to application development. I was like, I'm going to build applications for the desktop. That was it. I've figured out my future. And then I changed my mind again. So I ended up in web dev, and I'm quite happy. I lasted about 2 months at Bold before starting my own company. So a little bit about the web development field. It's extremely desirable. A lot of people want to work in web. The web isn't going away.
What made you change your mind from app?
Oh yeah, throughout the course you'll get to try all of them. So in your first term you'll do the business courses. You'll have your intro to various technologies. You'll probably do Java 1. In the second term you'll get to play with, I think you'll do some database, you'll do some web, stuff like that. And by going in and thinking, oh, I was going to do Linux, I'm going to do networking, I started doing Java. I was like, oh, I love Java. I don't love Java anymore. I don't use it. I mean, I like it, but it's not my choice. Then I started doing the web stream, and I mean, they're all fine streams, but the web stream is just the one that really interested me the most. By researching more into the field, finding what kind of companies were here in the city, I found that for me, it was the right fit. So it'll really boil down to you as a person figuring out what you want to do. So, do you want to work with hardware, lay the cables, manage the switches and routers? Do you want to build, the utilities and the technology that they'll be using at government facilities or stuff like that? Or do you want to build the mobile apps, or do you want to build websites or hybrid apps? Do you want to build a mix of the two? I kind of gravitated towards websites, mobile apps, and hybrid applications. Mostly because there are a lot of jobs. You can go to Kijiji right now, search web design, web development jobs, and you'll find all kinds. I mean, there's a lot of companies here in the city. They're all looking for people. It's very competitive, so you'll end up with good pay.
Mobile applications are app development, or
you'll have your Androids. You do an Android course, and it might be slightly different than when I took it, but you'll do mobile applications in the web stream. When you think about the application development stream, you're actually thinking more about C#, Power Builder, building applications for MPI, stuff like that. So it's a really good field, really good stream. It's a good field as well. But when you're thinking of Android and hybrid applications, you're actually thinking of the web stream. There's a really blurred line right now between web and mobile applications. They're really becoming one thing, quickly. By the time you're done Red River, it'll be completely different. Just in the time that I started, multiple new frameworks emerged. They've all come out and become more mature, and I'll touch on a couple of them throughout this. and you become extremely employable. So the skills that you learn here, on top of the business skills and the technology skills, you'll learn communication skills. They'll help you develop your soft skills. You become a well-rounded developer. You have not only the experience with technology, but the experience with people and the business side of things. And in my own experience, the accounting piece helps me more than anything else. So a few things that you should start thinking about that I started thinking about right at the beginning. So co-op and project. I started thinking, I don't have any experience in this field. I don't have any connections. Where am I going to work? My job before even coming to Red River and even into the beginning, I worked at a lumber yard. And my job was to move wood from this pile by hand into this pile. And I don't think there was a reason for it. Like, I'm pretty sure they just wanted me to move it for no reason. And that didn't help me at all with anything else. So I started thinking, like, what kind of job do I want? Do I want the kind of job where, I'm sitting at a desk or a cubicle and I have a tie on? Or do I want the kind of job where, I wear shorts to work? Or do I want, do I want to own a company, or do I want to, work somewhere else? All these things you think about, because one way to do it isn't for everybody. My experience, I found that I wanted to start my own company, and whether or not it was a smart idea right away, I don't know. It's going well, so far so good. But I started thinking about it day one. So like when I was sitting, I sat right here in this guy's spot. Every class, all throughout Red River, I sat in the same spot. And when I was sitting here on my orientation day, I was thinking the same thing. I started researching people that worked in the field. So started thinking about who lives in this city that works at companies that I might want to work, and who does what I want to do. And so I made a LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn becomes your profile where you can show off your skills. You can research other companies. You can learn about the people that work at those companies. It's hugely valuable. And my shameless plug there, follow Dan on Twitter. So thinking about things like GitHub, I made my GitHub profile in my very first semester. I believe you'll all end up making a GitHub at some point in the course, for sure in the web stream. GitHub becomes your portfolio where you can show off the technologies that you have been working on. So it actually ended up helping me a lot getting my first job. So when I went to go work at the company that I did my co-op with, I basically showed them, here's my GitHub, and I had some awful stuff in there. Like, I was a student, I thought it was fantastic. My first couple Android apps that I made, one of the utilities is still on the Google Play Store. It's got quite a few downloads now. It was a root utility for checking if you had properly rooted your phone. It gave you a bunch of device, stuff like that. I showed that off. And basically I said to him, look, I have a collection of code. Here's my LinkedIn. Here's my personal website. Here's my resume. Let's talk. All these things ended up helping me, keeping up to date with technology. So even before start thinking about, like, I'm going to be learning PHP later. What do I need to know about PHP? What kind of frameworks can I use? Like, what is there? What do I need to know that I don't know? Going to the meetup groups. So there's a huge community in the city, and you may or may not be involved in it already. But I mean, meetup groups in the city here, they range from 5 people to like 30 people. Sometimes there's free food. They'll usually bring in speakers. I'm the organizer of the Winnipeg Android user group. So if you're interested in developing Android applications, I actually run the group of people that get together to talk about developing for Android. And the focus of these groups vary. So some groups are generic, and some groups are specific on a technology. There's one for Ruby, there's one for PHP. The first one I ever went to was for WordPress. So I wanted to learn about developing WordPress applications and plugins and themes and stuff like that. Making those connections is key. So by going to the meetup groups, I started learning about the people that I needed to follow on LinkedIn, looking at their GitHubs to see what kind of code they were producing, where they were contributing their time, and I ended up meeting people that worked at companies like Automatic and Mozilla and huge companies, and they work here in the city. So learning from those people, seeing what kind of stuff they're working with, and getting their guidance on things is huge. started thinking about where could I work. I had no idea what kind of companies were here. So I mentioned a few that are on the street over here. There are more. So for example, Tipping Canoe. They're a PHP shop here in the city. They're on Albert Street, not far from here, just a few blocks. There's Visual Lizard. They do web design and development. They're just on Princess Street, just across the street from here. Bold Commerce is where I worked for my co-op. They're just outside of the city. They do web and sometimes mobile, mostly web, e-commerce applications. And like I said, there's a huge community of startups. I mean, there are events like Ramp Up Manitoba where when I started going to those events, like I started meeting people from different industries and different backgrounds and stuff, and it really helped me figure out like what was it that I wanted to do. So, you know, so a little bit about my company here. You can find our website, my company Twitter, and my company Instagram. So if you're into those kind of things, you can follow that. And then on the next one, if you guys are writing it down, I can put it back up after. So this is mine. So my Twitter, my Instagram, my email. So I have a few business cards and stickers left on the table over there. I didn't think it was going to run out, but I probably will run out. You can email me anytime. We can chat. You know, about what you guys are studying, what you're wanting to find projects, you want to build your skills, open source stuff, anything. I try to respond to all of them. So, you know, in order to not bore you with this presentation, instead I just want to answer your questions now. So you can ask me any questions. Try to keep them relevant, and I know you're first.
Sweet. All right, so over the last day and last Thursday as well as we're loading our VMs and things, I mean, I'm no stranger to computers. I've been working as a satellite internet installation technician for the last 2 years. I'm no stranger to a lot of this stuff, but I mean, there's words being thrown out of there that they're like, oh yeah, this is like things you have to know, like everybody knows this, everybody knows this, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What is that, right?
They'll come to you.
When you started, how much of that did you know coming into it? Like,
not at all, nothing at all.
Cool.
Well, a little bit. You know, I knew what a VM was. You know, stuff like that.
Okay.
You know, your virtual machine. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't actually have to install my virtual machine until I think it was like right at the end, and then it was for the application development stream. My term was the first of the bring your own laptop term. Before that, everybody had to rent a laptop from the college, and then they already had their consistent environment. And I was probably the worst person for them because I insisted on running Linux the whole time. And I mean, it was fantastic for networking, and it made my coding much better. But
So, sorry, you say you run Windows, but you also have Linux. Is that like a virtual machine for Linux, or?
no. When I turn on my computer, I get to choose.
Oh, you can. Oh,
Yeah, it's called dual booting. Yeah.
So what do you like about Linux? Because I've heard a lot about it, but I don't really know about it.
Okay, so going into the web stream, Linux is a Unix-based operating. It's Unix-like, so Linux. You'll run into the same stuff with Mac OS, where people say, "Oh, I don't want to buy a Mac because it's so expensive." It's Unix-based, so you'll actually get quite a bit of benefits. So depending on what you want to do, when you're going into web development, you're going to be looking for Unix-based systems because of the built-in terminals. I mean, like you'll have tools like I got PuTTY here. I can SSH into secure connections into servers. It's a lot more complex in Windows. You start running into issues with firewalls, and you start running into issues with your network settings. With Linux, what I like about it is when I want to do something, it lets me because it assumes that I know what I'm doing, which is a blessing and a curse. It's fun to play around with.
So it's very moldable.
Yeah, you basically can change anything you want, and there's different flavors of it. It's quite common. Ubuntu is one of the most popular operating systems in the world. All of your servers will run Linux. Okay. So even if you're working on Windows, you're probably pushing your code to Linux. All of my virtual servers and my Google platforms and all that, they're all running Ubuntu Linux or some version of Linux. So whether you're going to use it for your desktop or not, you're probably going to end up using it a little bit.
Sorry, one last question now as well.
Yeah.
How user-friendly? Like, did you have to do a lot of research into Linux before you could really use it, or is it more user-friendly than it had?
It's a lot more user-friendly than it had been. When I started with it, it was a long time before I went to Red River, so it was all command line.
Yeah.
And so I still default to the command line. Like, I still like to use the command line. It's a very powerful tool, and you will get to play with both the Windows command line and the Linux command line in this course. But you know, there's graphical interfaces for everything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
If I can use it, you can use it. It's easy. Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question. I got a little off track.
Yeah,
More or less,
like,
yeah.
more or less.
Okay, good. Another question.
The previous slide, it showed like 3 companies that we work for.
Yep.
Is BitSpace in there?
Yeah, it hopefully will be there even in the future. We're pretty new, so we started in March. We do work with a lot of people, and as we grow, you know, there is the possibility of you know, hiring more people.
What happened to your Brazilian student?
Well, they were on a project term, so you know, they go home. So now I have another project group starting with me this fall and January, and potentially you will work with me in the
I
future.
asked because we're Brazilian, I'm Brazilian.
You should come over and meet the remaining of the Brazilian students.
Yeah, sure.
My question kind of branches off is, say, assuming, you know, your company succeeds on in the future, being a Red River graduate, would you look into offering them like a co-op application?
Of course.
Do that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm already working with Red River, so I mean, I would only hope to continue. So.
So just to clarify on the branching off of his over there, you said they were working on a project, so they're doing the industry project.
Industry project.
So you work with the students that choose the industry side as opposed to the co-op.
Yeah. Not every industry
Not yet,
project, but
but-
I did have a project term. Yes.
So then, as your company, so then I mean, you know, tell me if I'm crossing the line or anything, but are you making your money from Red River by saying take these students to this project, or are you making it from going to a client and
Going
saying,
to a
"I can
client.
develop this
Yeah.
for you, and then you go to Red River and you say, give me these students because I need to develop this.
It's kind of a mix. So I mentor the students.
Yeah.
I work with them. I help them with project management. You can think of that as a service. I also do the development. So some of my projects, some of the like more technical ones are mine, and I'll work on them with me and some of the other people that work at BitSpace. Some of the projects may become industry projects. A lot of companies do industry projects though. So you know, I can't name too many of the other industry projects off the top of my head, but it is definitely something that exists, and it's a different experience. So I did co-op, and I've worked with industry project students, and it is different. So in a lot of co-ops, you end up, you know, you're working a real job. You're getting paid to be there. You have accountability, but you're also a student working, you know, at a big company. So you might not end up doing the craziest stuff ever. You know, you're not applying as much of your skills probably. It depends on where you end up working, obviously. The project term, you're usually more involved. So from my experience, you learn more, but of course it's a project term. So there are benefits to both to consider. I wish I had done the project term.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
personally,
so maybe
yeah.
The next question is, if you could go back, would you do the co-op again?
Yeah.
Or would you do the project?
No, it really depends on, of course, like, you know, one term you're getting paid. So how much do you care about getting paid versus how much you're learning, right? It's in the long run, I think the project term is fantastic. But I also think co-op is good too. They just have different pros and cons.
Cool.
More questions? We got
So
about
the bulk of mine.
5 more minutes, so
Good way to-
2 more minutes.
Good way to keep your company afloat, though. You cut costs by the industry projects if you have them. Obviously, that's not your goal, is to just steal students for free, but like that is smart, though.
That's
If you want to talk money, it's smart.
yeah. I guess you could look at it that way. However, you know,
But you're also teaching them.
yeah.
which is
That's
the main point.
that's the main thing there.
Yeah, there's also the fact that students are going to take a lot longer to get that project out than a group of
Yeah.
senior people
people who've been programming for a while that know this stuff, they could push that app out in a week or two or a couple of weeks as opposed to these kids are going to take a full term for it. And if you want to talk money, well then getting the project out and delivered, that's money.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are definitely pros and cons. But it is a very meaningful experience that, whether or not you're working with my company or not on the project term, it ends up being quite nice.
Well, it's probably nice to come out of school too and then instantly apply what you learned tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the trade-off though is like, you did a project, it's cool, you have something to show off. The other one is the co-op where you have, you worked with a different company, but either way, you're building something for your resume. So what's nice about the project that I found was, regardless of what path I chose, I ended up with something that I could really show off and really, say, I worked here or I did this, and, that really helps.
Have you heard of students doing both?
I don't know if you can. I don't know if it's never happened. You should probably talk to P414.
Yeah.
I think that's the default. Yeah.
So
I was trying to talk to Dan. Yeah.
Dan Greenberg is going to be your go-to guy. He's fantastic. He's the co-op coordinator, and you'll meet him quite a bit. I work closely with him to set up my co-op and everything, and I'm fortunate enough to continue working closely with him even after graduating. But yeah, he's fantastic, and he'll answer all of those questions for you.
So go to P414 and then ask for that.
So you mentioned resume. Say we take the work experience side, like we choose that over co-op. What exactly can we put on a resume?
Well, you talk about the project that you worked on.
Okay.
Yeah, you say, I worked on a project for my project term. These are the skills that I applied. This was the outcome. And I mean, depending on the project, you might be able to talk more about it than others. You always run into issues of like, can you talk about the project or not?
Oh, right.
But yeah, you'll always be able to say you did something, so.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the co-op too, though, right? Is that the companies that are being involved in the co-op need to show that you are working on a specific project, something that has measurable, a measurable outcome.
Yeah, you're never going to end up on a project that's not worth your time.
Yeah, so that's part of it.
You're only going to do stuff that's worthwhile.
Like, what would you put, like literally what would you put on the resume? Because obviously, like say I go to MPI, right?
Yeah.
Just write, I did a co-op term in MPI.
Yeah, well, you'd say.
So you can actually put what you're.
Yeah,
like,
why
it's
not?
A secrecy thing. You can
No.
say, this is what I did. This is who I did it for. This is like how I.
Yeah, and then of course that would be stuff you discuss with Dan too.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're within the ethical boundaries of doing such a thing. But
that was more of my question. Not like, is it going to be nice on your resume? I meant like,
oh yeah.
What literally can you put on your resume at that point?
Yeah, well, what I created with my students over the summer was, we open source certain components. A lot of what they were working on was for me, so we created open source stuff. They can actually show off a portion of the code that they wrote. They have, a history of what they've done. They get to say they worked with my company, even though it was a project term with Red River. So
it really depends on.
It really depends on the client.
Who you're doing that project for and what they allow to be pushed out.
Yes, and I think that about wraps it up.